Subcommittee meeting. Roll call, please.
Member Dugan?
Present.
Member Magnolia?
Present.
Okay. Just to start, I was kind of hoping that we could kind of have an 8 o'clock hard stop on this one. J is a very beefy section, so it would be easy to kind of get carried away. And I just want to make sure we're all present mentally still. So I think 2 hours is a good chunk of time to focus on this one policy. If we get it done, great. If not, we'll have to schedule another one if everyone's okay with that. So that's sort of my thought there. And to get started, we're going to discuss policy. We're going to kind of go out of order a little bit, and we're going to discuss policy. I got to make sure I get this number correct. JIH, sorry. JIH. And to help us with that, we have a team that have been working on this one that consists of Dr. Alvarez, Deputy Superintendent Goris, Principal Dunn, and Mrs. O'Neill and Attorney Gallo, who are here. So, Superintendent Alvarez.
Thank you. Good evening. So this is the introduction of our protective sweeps policy, which would be a new policy entered for us. And essentially, I want to give you just a little bit of rationale and some data around why we want to introduce this policy and believe that this is an effort to be proactive and to ensure the safety of all of our students and staff within our schools, specifically our secondary schools, our middle and high schools, and also to be able to support students with restorative practices and make sure that we have a plan in place prior to the execution of any sweep in which we have all of our secondary principals come together as part of administrative process after this policy. We want to ensure that there are steps and that would be taken when we find, right, a weapon of any kind, or if there are illicit drugs of any kind, what would we do for students in terms of steps for support? So I do want to share, I've given you a copy of the actual, you should have it in front of you, of the actual incidents. And I do want to just review this for the importance of what the data actually tells us. And when we look at the first page has a number of offenses. This is the report that went, a required report to DESE on disciplinary status of offense by district. But when we go to, let's see, you have a number of, page 3 at the very bottom, you'll see weapons possessions, firearms, and other weapons. And so the number reported for this past year, for school year 22-23, rose to 66. And I want to give you some sort of context here, because if you look at the second page also, at the last page, you're going to see the number of suspensions that also resulted from this. And again, the idea being that catching a weapon prior to an incident, catching a weapon when we know that we need to do, whether it's clinical work, we need to do counseling, referral to outside agencies, whatever the case may be, how do we best support students when they, and knowing the reasons, right? What is the root cause of why they were carrying a weapon, or how they had an illicit drug, which we know undoubtedly there may be occasions where we may be looking for weapons, but we may find other things. And so in the rationale of the data, just to give you perspective, 2018 to 2019 school year, there were 7 weapons, 4 large knives with a blade over 2.5 inches and 3 small knives. In year 1920, there were 14, 3 large knives, 8 small knives, and 3 other weapons. During the COVID year 2021, we only had 1 large knife. During 20, not that 1 isn't enough, but 21, 22, the numbers jumped significantly to 1 handgun, 14 large knives, 7 small knives, and 7 other weapons. And then in 22, 23 is the number that we just saw reported, was a 66. There were 2 handguns, 8 other firearms, 22 large knives, 5 small knives, and 5 other knives, and then 24 other weapons, which could have been a variety of things. And so from that, I will pass it over to an overview of really what the process would look like to Deputy Superintendent Goris.
Good evening, members of the school committee. I want to review with you the process that we underwent in order to identify an effective policy for us to support protective sweeps in a way that upholds students' rights and supports our staff members. So the way that we went about that was first to look at the Massachusetts Association of School Committees model policy on this at other school districts. We convened 2 meetings, and those meetings included principals, administrators, Officer Mackin, and also we included the mayor's office, Dania Smith, and our DEI person, Bobby Bishop, who joined us in the second session to review the policy, specifically to look at its impact on students. We reviewed and revised a draft prepared by Compliance Officer Charlie Gallo. We got some input and review from our attorneys, and who has a specific focus on student discipline and its an impact on students' rights and access to education. We really looked at this policy as a proactive measure instead of a reactive measure. And lastly, again, highly emphasizing balancing the rights of students and also securing the safety of our schools. So that was our process and how we came about this draft version of this policy. I'm actually going to have Compliance Officer Gallo speak about the overview of the draft and what you will find in this policy.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairperson Dugan and members of the subcommittee and committee of the whole. I'm just going to give you a quick overview, and of course happy to take any questions on this proposed new revised policy JIH. The first section is the inclusion of protective sweeps, which is new. The existing policy, JIH, allows for only individual searches based on reasonable suspicion. So this is new, and in preparing it, we went through the exercise that the Deputy Superintendent spoke about in detail, and I also want to add that mass.gov, or the Commonwealth, has guidance that permits protective sweeps as long as you have a policy that's written and the policy is available in the handbook. And so that's why we're here today, to put everybody on notice that we would be doing this as a proactive measure if the school committee and policy subcommittee approves of it. There is one proposed amendment to the policy. You'll see it highlighted. Protective sweeps will be conducted at the discretion of Lynn Public Schools and will be, and it should say conducted and or overseen by building-based or district-level administrators. And this was a sidebar that we had just a moment ago, Dorothy and myself. And so that is the gist of the protective sweep portion. And the policy then continues with a portion on individual searches of students and student-owned properties. That requires reasonable suspicion, no real change from the existing policy. There's also some clarity around questioning of students by police, and that, again, is not necessarily new, but it's just to put everybody on notice of how that will work. And then finally, and Dorothy, hopefully I'll get a smile out of on this one, but we added a last section which is really to parse out policy versus procedure and give the superintendent or her designee the ability to set procedures. And those procedures are identifying who are the appropriate administrators to carry out the searches. Establishing practices, and this is important, to protect the dignity of students, because there might be a protective sweep and something might be found or it might not be, and we need to protect the dignity of the student in either event. Also protecting the student's dignity with regardless of their sex, gender identity, race, and any other protected class that there would be. And so that's specifically mentioned, as well as for the arranging and keeping of data. These are all things that this proposed policy would empower the superintendent to do, but they're not within the policy because they are continuing the theme procedure and not policy. So I got at least one smile. Thank you, Dr. Magnolia, as well. 2 smiles. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions or turn over to Principal Dunn, who's been a great support and co-drafter in this as well.
Yeah, Principal Dunn, why don't you present, and then we'll open to questions. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. This really hits close to home for Lynn Classical High School. As many of you know, we had an incident at our school this past spring where a weapon was used against another student. And we really want to make sure that we are setting the tone and taking action to be proactive so that we don't see that type of action again in our school. I think it's really important for us to have policy and procedure around this so that we see this across the board at all schools, that we make sure that we protect our students, families, and staff in this process, and that we make our schools the safest that they can possibly be. So, this is something that I think is a long time coming, and I hope that you would consider.
Any questions? Yes, Dr. Magnolia.
Okay, so I'm not sure if Attorney Gallo is the right person or Dorothy to address this. So it's on the second page where it says the school may contact the student's parent or guardian so that the responsible individual may be notified of the situation. Help me understand the legality for, say, students who are quite young in terms of the notification of parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where the law falls on this. That was my only question about the whole policy.
There was a lot of back and forth on that particular provision, so I'm glad you raised it with counsel here. And the idea is that it's situation-based. So there might be a situation like what happened at Classical where police may come in and there's not time for that notification, but there may also be a situation where the student is younger, or maybe it's a warrant type issue, or the police are doing an investigation where situation-based, there may be a courtesy call home about that. And so this policy sort of puts us on notice of that flexibility. Does that...
Well, I guess the question is, what is the responsibility of the school to notify the parents, and in what kind of time frame?
Right.
Because that word may suggests that there's a situation in which they may not be. So I think that's what I'm trying to parse out with the way it's phrased.
And I think that will probably come within the procedures after this, but
Okay.
but the idea being that in a Classical situation, they don't have to. That it's a may, it's not a shall. So, the Classical situation, that's going on in real time. The police are going to be called. But let's say it's a situation where a student was suspected of, stealing a car 3 weeks before. Well, in that case, we need to look out for our students' constitutional rights, and so maybe in that case, the guidance would say that the parent would be called. But that provides for the flexibility in that guidance. Okay.
I can also speak to common practice.
Yeah, go ahead.
We do, I would say 99% of the time, call the families as we're calling 911 or the police.
Okay.
In a situation like last year, I wouldn't say it was before the police got here, but it was certainly simultaneously as it was going on.
And if I could just add one other, I glossed over and didn't mean to, another provision here, which is just after the provision that Dr. Magnolia mentioned, that we do have our reference to the policy JIAAA, which is the sanctuary school policy, and we want to ensure that in adopting this, we're also not doing anything that is going to in any way jeopardize anyone's immigration status, and so we're reinforcing that policy, a very good policy, I think, that the school committee adopted 4 or 5 years ago, I think, at this point.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Other members?
Would you like to vote on this one separately from all of J, or do you want to bundle it?
I would think it's important to vote on this one so we can get started.
Okay.
Yeah, September. Yeah.
Okay, so I'd like to move the new policy JIH to the full committee.
Second. Roll call, please.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Magnolia?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so thank you, team, for all the work you did on this. I think, I'm sorry.
I had a
Member
quick
Pena,
I had
yes.
a quick question. With the police interrogations, during the school, it says, schools have legal custody of students during the school day, during hours of approval, with the activities. Now, when law enforcement officials find it necessary to question the student during the school day, and they can have a principal present, wouldn't they want to have a parent present during that time? Would they contact the parent during that interrogation?
I think I'd refer to Attorney Gallo for that. Yeah.
Yeah, and Principal Dunn may have experience as well, but I actually happened to be in a school that this happened to be at because I was at their graduation exercises, and we couldn't reach a parent, and so an administrator sat in.
So administrator sat in, okay.
So again, providing that flexibility, and so that was something that I happened to be at. Amy, I'm sure, has probably more experience than
Yep.
as a building administrator.
Absolutely. So there are times that police come and question students at the building level. We make all, we try our best to get parents to the table whenever that happens, and we let them know that we are calling their families. But there are times, like, police have the right, especially when they're older students, to investigate and ask them questions. So like I said, all that happens simultaneously. As soon as we know that there's going to be police involved, we tell the parents.
Yeah, so anyway, thank you, team, for putting this all together. I think
Thank you.
this is really important that we get this done for September. So I'm really excited that we'll be discussing it at our first full meeting. You know, a lot of families are obviously very concerned about these things, and I think this is a really important one, and thank you for all your work. I
Thank you
appreciate
very
it
much.
all.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Much needed. Yeah, I got a call from my parents today. About the concern of the student.
Okay, moving along, let's start tackling policy J. Let me get my notes together here. So I guess we'll start with JJ, co-curricular and extracurricular activities. Ms. Presser, I wonder if you could kind of,
I could.
Talk a little bit about your recommendation there.
Setting the table first, though. So we are actually jumping into the end of Section J.
yes.
If you remember,
Thank you.
we had some discussion. We have already discussed a lot of the discipline policies.
Mm-hmm.
And Attorney Gallo and I have some work to do to make sure that we're very clear on what policies have been passed and what policies should be removed from the manual. So rather than say, we're not ready for J because we still have that to parse out, it seemed to make sense to say, okay, starting with JJ to the end with one exception, those aren't discipline policies. We can do, we can
Yep.
do those and continue the work while we're continuing to work on the discipline conundrum, I guess is the best word to say.
Right, thank you for that. Thank you for that. So,
And I do want to, in overall, there are a lot of topics covered in these. I think you'll notice if you read through the notes, there's a lot of recommendations, sort of this can be removed.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's not to diminish the importance of the topics,
Mm-hmm.
but it's more to say, these are really not policies, these are more procedures
Procedural.
that don't belong in the manual.
right, thank you.
So then, starting with JJ.
JJ,
There are two versions. There's the MASC version and the Lynn version. And for those of you who are new to this process, when you look at any packet that we send, at the bottom of each policy will be the source. So the Lynn version says source Lynn, and the MASC version says source MASC. Sometimes there will be one and not the other.
right, thank you.
So in the two policies on Section J took sort of different approaches. Actually, the co-curricular and extracurricular one from Lynn didn't really address anything other than athletics. And the MASC version took a more general approach to sort of broadly defining the goals and purpose of co-curricular and extracurricular activities, which seem to be more appropriate at the policy level. There is more information ongoing in the JJ section about MIAA and so forth. So
Correct.
it seemed to me to make sense to go in the MASC direction on that one.
Correct. Yeah, I'm in agreement with that.
I'm in
Member
agreement with
Agnolia?
that, yeah.
Any other members want to kind of chime in on that before we move on? Good, okay. All right, the next section is, and there's some people that haven't been to a policy, so we typically just kind of go through, everything's in there. I think Ms. Preston just did a great job, but the procedure is just kind of go through, we look at the recommendations, and we kind of discuss whether or not we're going to go with those recommendations, just for those of you that haven't been at one of these yet. So anyway, moving on to JJA, and that is about student organizations. Ms. Presser.
So again, sort of a different approach in the two policies. And I think the MASC version in this case would be more appropriate. The Lynn version actually gives approval of different student organizations to the school committee, which does not seem appropriate.
Right.
The better guidance would be for the school committee to give policy overview about these are the types of organizations that are acceptable or not, and let the building administrators decide.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm sure there's probably things that we're not aware of that are happening because this is, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other thoughts from the committee? Okay. Moving on. JJAA, Student Authority at Student Activities, Freedom of Speech and Assembly.
So this is a Lynn policy only. I think the direction that you choose to go in this one is actually at your discretion. But there are other policies within J that do cover student voice, student speech. So this becomes a little bit duplicative in only talking about student activities.
Correct. So your recommendation would be to remove this, okay, from our manual. Any thoughts on that one?
I'm good.
Moving J. Okay, so thought is to remove JJAA. Okay. Moving on to JJD, student activity fees.
So this one, in looking at this, it, first of all, may be dated. It really is more procedure than policy. So again, the more appropriate place would be to put the current information in a handbook rather than in a policy manual.
I agree, and I think it is, as you said, it's a bit dated. I don't think we have an athletic fee, and it says there's a $20 annual fee for anything. So that's, it's dated, so, I'm on board with removing this.
I agree.
Members?
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on, JJE, fundraising activities. Ms. Presser.
So the Lynn version does lay out some guidelines that you may want to keep in place, actually.
Yep.
So this may be one where we look at it a little bit more.
Okay.
The one thing I think that's in the MASC one that you might want to think about is that the next to the last paragraph in the MASC one about not using fundraising activities to be competitions among students. It's kind of an equity issue, I think.
Yeah, I had some thoughts on this one. I was hoping to keep part 2 of the Lynn policy. So if we could all just kind of take a look at JJE, source Lynn. Fundraising drives may be conducted only by duly. So everything that comes under that, under part 2, I was thinking it's kind of unique to Lynn. I think that's an important thing to keep. Are there any other thoughts on that one? Just to Dr. Magnolia?
Yeah, so interesting, this penultimate paragraph in the MASC one, I happen to know that my daughter's elementary school would be in direct conflict of it. So I think what happens is classrooms do compete against each other to see who can raise the most money, and they get extra recess for it. So I don't know if we want to take what's actually happening and look at the policy, or take the policy and change what's actually happening. But I wanted to bring that up as a specific example after I read this. I was like, okay, yeah. So all the years she was there, they were all in competition with each other.
Agreed. My children are the same thing at different things that they've done, different sports they've been a part of. There were, prizes for kids that raise X amount of money and things like that. So I think if we are to adopt the MASC version, that paragraph would need to be removed. Another thought, canning. So if we look at the MSC version, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph down, for safety reasons and because the school committee recognizes that community members receive requests for support from many worthy causes, activities such as canning and door-to-door sales are strongly discouraged. And we all know the Wyoming toll booth,
So canning for those, it's standing outside the supermarket with a can asking for donations.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit in Lynn, so I would be opposed to keeping that. I'd cross off the word canning. Door-to-door sales, Dr. Alvarez, I don't know if you want to, would you be okay with keeping door-to-door sales or maybe getting rid of that?
All my neighbors do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing I worry about door-to-door sales is the the safety of students. given, right, the types of incidents that we know all urban communities
Yeah.
face.
Yep.
And so, when parents are not walking with them door to door, like, or an adult that's sort of monitoring, that becomes an issue. And frankly, a real safety issue.
Yeah.
So I think it's something for us to consider.
Okay. So keeping in there.
Can I just note?
Yes.
I know from
Dr.
personal
Jarrett.
experience as a principal of an elementary school, anytime we did fundraising,
Yeah.
it was bold and highlighted no door-to-door sales.
Yeah.
And to only sell to family and close friends.
Okay.
Like, I agree, the safety of going door to door makes me nervous.
Yes. Okay.
I haven't seen that practice happen,
Yeah.
you know.
No, not as much as it once did, I don't think. So, okay, just to kind of get us back on track, canning we would remove.
So you're
Oh,
looking.
I'm sorry,
So
Ms.
just,
Presser. Yeah.
you're looking at the MASC.
I am
And
looking
at some
at,
point, you want to make sure that the number 2 gets folded in.
correct,
Okay.
that's what I was thinking, that number
Okay.
2 gets folded in. And if it does get folded into the MASC, we're kind of, parsing out the parts that we'd want to keep there. So, activities such as door-to-door sales are strongly discouraged, and
Yeah.
we take
Yes.
canning
Exactly,
out,
yeah.
okay.
And then the next to the last paragraph, you would
And then the next to the
not-
last paragraph, we
Okay.
would
Strike.
strike
Okay.
as well
Yeah.
in the MASC version, right? And then I guess my next thought is if we're okay with keeping 2 from the Lynn version, where might that be the best place for it to fit in?
I think it would go at
Thoughts, yeah,
the
Dr.
end.
Magnolia, at the end, okay.
Yeah, so it would read, no money collections of any kind may be held in the schools without the specific consent of the superintendent. And then fundraising drives may be conducted only by duly authorized clubs and groups of the school.
Okay.
And then the list would come after it.
Okay. All right, so, Ms. Jules, yes?
I just have, are you leaving canning, taking canning out?
We
Canning
would
is
take
out.
canning out, yeah. If we're to adopt the MASC version, it would come out.
And then striking the penultimate paragraph completely.
Keeping
Yep.
canning out, meaning 'cause
Are we
want it
keeping the
to-
competitions in?
I think the thought was, yes, keep the competition part.
Well, I think we
Oh,
say
no.
nothing.
No, they
Oh, we
wouldn't.
just don't say anything about it, or just,
Yeah.
eliminate it, yeah.
Yeah.
At the secondary level, that competition, the fundraising, I think it's not as, maybe a little more effective in equity in, at the, elementary level, all that, but. I think
Yes.
At the secondary level, I think it gives initiative for students
Yes.
to participate and stuff. I like to just not
Yes.
mention it at all.
Yeah, thank you,
And
Member
at the elementary level, if you're only talking to family and friends to fundraise, it is kind of an equity issue on, your family resources
Yeah.
and the breadth of your friendships. I guess.
If you're an
Right.
only
Yeah.
child,
Yeah.
Right.
you don't have a lot of,
Not a lot, right.
Well, and I think that's where my question came from, which is, it's happening. So it might be an equity issue, but it's happening. Do we make a policy that we know is going to be violated? Do we this is a chicken and an egg kind of argument, right? So it would mark a sea change across the district to say we want this policy. So I want to be deliberative about it. If we kept that in, it would require making sure that every principal and every PTO understand the policy and understand why it's an equity issue. Because if I'm experiencing it in the elementary school and we have other people experiencing it in the secondary schools, then clearly this is not just a one-off of one school. So to my mind, striking it makes sense because of the fact that if we say nothing positive or nothing negative, maybe we can deal with sort of the culture that promotes this. But I don't want to see a policy which we know we're going to actively violate. That's my issue.
Mine as well. Member Gately, I saw you with your hand, thank you.
Well, I was in agreement there. I think, like even on the high school, it's not just elementary. On the high school, you have school spirit week, and then you compete with other classes and the doors and all this stuff, and they win. So, yeah, I think we should strike it because we do a lot of, we're very competitive.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so just, Mrs. Jules, but I'll review all of that just so you've got that. And chime in if you feel I've made a mistake here. So we're going to adopt the MASC version of JJE. We're going to strike canning from the 5th paragraph.
Canning and.
Canning and, right, and just keep it activities such as door-to-door sales.
Good.
Agreed.
We are going to strike the following paragraph, which we just discussed. And then we are going to add 2 from the Lynn version to the one that we will adopt at the end of the MASC version.
Including all the letters that
Including all the
follow,
letters
too.
that follow, yeah.
Yes.
What he means by taking it out, is that?
Yeah, Member Gately, I'm sorry.
Oh, so you're
Yeah,
going
so-
to take out
We're
canning?
going to take out
We're
the
gonna take out
words
canning,
canning
the-
and, not eliminate the practice.
Not eliminate the process, that's just coming out of the policy.
And it's still
Yeah.
going to have, we're eliminating door-to-door.
No, we're
No.
keeping
We're
door-to-door.
keeping
Keeping
door-to-door sales
door-to-door.
is strongly discouraged.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So and again, it says are strongly discouraged, so it does leave you a little wiggle room, but I think the thought is that that's, in today's world, that's a little unsafe for
By saying strongly discouraged,
Yeah.
so it allows, like, if a parent wanted to bring their child in the neighborhood going door to door, that's safer to me. You've got an adult with you. But if we don't say strongly discouraged, a child could go door to door on their own, and we don't want that.
No, we don't, at least we don't want to promote that.
This
Yeah,
day and
yeah,
age.
right. Right. Okay, are there any other thoughts on JJE? Okay, and Mrs. Jules, you're good with that? Okay. Thank you, everyone. All right, moving along. So JJER is in the packet, but there were no recommendations.
Well, I
Okay.
sort of folded it into what I had under JJE.
Okay, so let's jump to JJE and Mrs. Presser.
I think that it's policy to me, procedure to me.
Okay.
It should, anything, partly because it's dash R to begin with, right? So to me, that's procedure.
Yeah, I agree. I wrote that on my notes as well, that we could strike. Okay.
Strike.
And I would say the same thing about JJEA.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, so, and I wrote a note that canning actually is done through the city, so it's, I would think it goes through the superintendent's office, then I think Lisa Nerick
Yeah.
is in charge of the schedule of canning, and am I right about that? So, yeah, for us to have it in our policy, I think kind of might make her life more difficult, so we don't want to do that. So strike JJEA, okay.
And JJER.
And JJER, correct. All right, JJF, student activity accounts. Mrs.
You're
Presser.
saying strike on JJEA.
Yes.
Are you saying it's not going anyplace, or is it gonna go in a proceed?
Well, I think with that one,
We already said.
yeah, like I said, the city kind of dictates
Okay, I know
canning.
you're saying the
Yeah.
city, but should we ask the city to make sure she has these same stipulations?
Yeah, we definitely can, yeah. I'll write a note of that. Mhm.
So a lot of the times when we said strike from the policy manual, the understanding is that the document would, or the information in the document would then go to reside in a handbook or in the appropriate department information. So it's not disappearing into the,
Okay. Well,
Abyss.
just
Void.
because
Yeah.
they said it was going,
Yeah.
out to
Yeah,
someplace else.
yes, thank you. Any other? Yes, Member Gately.
The last point on the student fundraising canning drives policy, it states that the organization must have a canning permit and must comply with all requirements of Lynn City Council. I would like to have that in somewhere in the policy for here, so that when, say, a new club starts and they want to have a canning and they want to know what to do, they could go to this and know what to do.
Yeah.
That would be in the handbook. So to know what to do is a procedure, which is in a handbook. Policy are guiding principles for, like, ideas.
Yeah.
So we would look at the actual process of it and give it some shape as administrators that it would be directly working with anyone who is supporting this at, at the city level as well.
I would just hate
Yeah.
for some teacher or some coach to have a question about canning and not be able to think to themselves, oh, we can't can anymore because it's not in our school,
Yeah.
at our school level.
did
It's
take-
only
Yeah,
at
I-
the
But
school.
usually when,
Didn't we just?
Can
take it out?
I just have a point of clarification? Just, there is a lot of us here tonight, so if we could just, I know normally at these meetings, it's a little more informal, but, Member Pena, yes.
yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay, that's
Yeah,
okay.
Usually when a new organization club comes in and they require the permission with the city, they automatically are informed about, fundraising. So that's why they keep a schedule, so we don't have conflicts of double booking, because
Right.
as a coach,
Yeah.
sometimes you have some children in certain dunks and stuff like that, and you just don't want to mix up. So they're informed when they form the organization.
Yeah.
Right away, they're updated with the information.
I would think
on
so.
the procedures and stuff.
Mrs. Presser, yes.
As a
We
phone
could,
call.
if there's a document that describes what they need, we could put it as a legal reference in the fundraising policy.
Absolutely, yeah.
That would give some direction to someone who is looking for it.
Yep. Member Capola.
I was here when we voted on that, and
Yep.
the reason was people wrote checks and put them in the cans, and the checks never got cashed. That's time and time again. So it was asked that the cans be sealed, but they really don't follow that policy,
Yeah.
because I just dropped a check in a can, and the boy took the cover right off of the can. So,
Yeah. Right.
the money
right.
isn't obviously sometimes getting where it should be.
Yeah, that's troubling.
Okay.
Anyway, back to Member Gately. Are you satisfied with Mrs. Presser's recommendation?
I am.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or concerns? Okay. Ms. Jules, you have all that? All right, wonderful. All right. JJG, contests for, no, JJF, excuse me, student activity accounts is next.
So on this one, the MASC version includes information based on some new regulations regarding graduating class funds and student activity deficit accounts. So I think this is an area where you probably want the MASC version.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. Any other thoughts? Okay, so take the MSC version of JJF.
I think Ms. Gately had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Gately?
No, I was just going to agree with her.
You were going to agree.
Because as a former class advisor and having an account and students not knowing where to go to get the money that was
Yeah.
in the account after I'm gone, it was like a sticky thing.
Absolutely. I
But
think
now they
that,
know, they'll have this.
yeah, the MSC version does a better job than ours did. Okay, I jumped the gun a bit. Now we're on JJG, contests for students.
So this
Ms.
is a
Presser.
Lynn policy only. If it's current, I don't think there's any reason to touch it.
Yeah, I agree. I wrote in my notes to keep this. I see no issue with it. Thoughts? Okay, keep Lynn version of JJG. Right,
Okay, so JJH.
JJH.
I lost my place. The two versions match, except for an additional legal reference, or that is in the Lynn version and not the MASC version. And the MASC version is entitled late night or overnight travel as opposed to just student travel.
Okay. So it sounds like maybe we decide on a title and whether to keep the legal references. Member Magnolia.
I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs.
The
Presser.
legal reference, I don't think you want to keep it, because I think what has happened in putting MGL 69 1B is it's now that it is what the acts, that 346 of the acts of 2002 became,
Oh, okay.
once they got codified into the general laws.
Okay. Member Magnolia. I believe you had
Yeah.
a thought.
Do you see any preference for student late night or overnight travel versus student travel? What?
Well, we did, in section I, there were policies on field trips, which is also kind of travel.
Yeah.
So I think you might want to be a little more specific, that this is a particular genre, type of travel,
Yeah.
as
Okay.
opposed to just travel in general.
Yeah, so the thought would be to keep it student late night or overnight travel, the title, okay. Member Pena?
Yeah, I had another question, just concerning student travel. It might not be, I don't think it's related to policy. I was, even today, I was approached on, you know, where there's other students that we have that participate in other youth programs that are not part of LPS, and they get to win championships or play, or invited to travel, like to play in a national level. And sometimes this happens during school, you know, the school year. And is there any way you can look into the policy where maybe there'd be an exception, because as you know, we had the Pop Warners.
We did.
Where they had to travel for national, but it's during school, and we didn't allow them. So some of them kind of took some time off, which was against our policy.
Yeah,
Looking to making some changes into that.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying, but I think what this one is addressing is specific school-sponsored
Yeah.
travel. I don't know if it's really,
No,
this
I understand
specific
what you're
policy is not addressing.
But it's
Yeah.
kind of related, you know, when.
Yeah,
So
there's
that's
a
why I was
relation
just
there.
trying to bring up that policy.
Yeah.
If there's any way you can look into that.
Mrs.
And I
Presser?
think what you're talking about might be more addressed under student absences
Correct.
as opposed to student travel.
Yeah, so, okay. So if we get to, we'll take a look at student absence for you, Member Pena. Yeah.
So,
Member
To
Magnolia?
that section, all right.
so we need to rename JJH.
Do, get back to this.
To student late night or overnight travel.
Travel.
And we need to remove that one highlighted legal reference, correct?
I
Correct.
believe so, yes.
Okay, I
Believe
just
that's
want to
it.
make sure Ms.
Get that squared away.
Jules
yes.
has the corrections. Yeah,
She is the most important person here.
Truly.
okay.
It is true.
Okay, and now I'm good.
All right, any other thoughts on JJH? Okay. JJHR, student travel regulations.
And this is one where often we say, keep the regulations out, but this gives a lot of guidance for faculty that may be planning trips to know what is needed, so it's one that we really suggest stay in.
Yeah.
The difference that they've mostly matched, in the third paragraph, though, under transportation, I think the easiest thing to do might be to say, go with the MASC version, but at least there was some inaccuracies in the Lynn version in that third paragraph,
Okay.
according to current information.
They're both saying
I'm good with adopting MASC.
Yeah, I'm fine with adopting MASC as well, just to kind of correct that.
Might be the easiest way to just.
I believe, yeah, I think that's probably the right course of action. Any other thoughts from? Okay, so we are adopting JJHR, the MASC version. All right. Moving on to JJIB, interscholastic athletics. Mrs. Presser?
So there, the first three paragraphs, or the first four paragraphs match. The Lynn version has then eligibility and transfer and athletic participation. Those looked to me more like procedure issues than policy issues, and would more appropriately reside in a handbook.
I don't totally disagree with that. I think we're going to come to another one later, too, that kind of, especially that transfer and athletic participation, that I do want to discuss, but I'm okay with removing it from there. I'll give you guys a minute to digest that, and just make sure everybody's good. Okay, so the thought would be take the Lynn, but get rid of everything, or I'm sorry, the MASC version?
Yeah,
Not the
one
I'm sorry,
other
yes.
just kind of subtle difference in the MASC version is the beginning of the second paragraph. We just added the word district participation to make it clear that we're not talking about every individual student's participation in
Yes.
interscholastic. It's the district participation.
Correct. Okay, so it sounds like we're for adopting the MASC version of JJIB. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, Member Gailey.
Okay, so what does it look like for a student will be required to successfully complete at least 20 hours of prepared work per academic quarter. I'm on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What does
Yes.
it look like?
Yes. So the MIAA does address that, where there is certain criteria that student athletes have to meet per the just to be part of the MIAA. That's kind of my thought there. And then it does come up in a little one of the next pages that we're going to address. It does come up again, and I think we'll.
JJIBA.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
thinking it's a good time to discuss it at that point.
It'll be in
Yeah,
JJIBA.
it's going to come up in just a minute again. So it's a little redundant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So JJIB-R,
Okay.
from what I could tell, this was a quote from the cited laws and doesn't need to be in the handbook.
Okay. Yeah, my notes, I wrote that that's, I agree with that. So that would strike JJIB-R.
Yep.
Because they're in laws. Everyone okay with that? Okay. All right, moving along. JJIB-A, the Good Citizen Rule, MIAA athletic eligibility.
So basically JJIBA, C, and CA, and CB, those are all the MIAA ones. Is
These
that
are the ones
correct?
these are the ones
Okay.
that, yeah. So
Can we talk about them together? Is that okay? Because of the
I
MIAA?
think that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. We could do that. Yep.
Is that okay with you, Dorothy?
Are
Absolutely.
you okay with
Okay.
that, Ms. Presser?
Absolutely.
Okay. So anyway, Mrs. Presser, I'll let you kind of lead the conversation. We'll go from there. Yep.
These are all ones that are Lynn documents only. There's no comparable MASC version. And to me, they all look as things that either they're quotes from the MIAA handbook or their MIAA rules, which the district is bound to follow anyway if it's an MIAA sport. They might be in the student handbook, they might be in the athletic handbook, but they don't need to be in policy.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, my thought, rules, that first page is right on page 54 of the MIAA handbook, which I asked Mrs. Jules, who she very thoughtfully included in our things tonight. My only concern is, what did I write my notes? Excuse me 1 second. The transfer, so JJICA.
Yeah.
That is kind of a sticky one. I know just from my experience with my children and some of their friends that have transferred and hoping to play sports from classical to English. I kind of feel it's important to keep that one there because that is a very unique thing to Lynn. Well, probably not to Lynn, but it's unique to communities that have more than one high school that compete in athletics, because I think if we don't have quick access to that, it does open a door to, okay, classical's basketball team's really good this year, so I'm going to transfer to classical, but they're going to be down next year, so I'm going to go back to English. I just feel like personally it's important to keep that in our policy manual, that we are kind of, we are forbidding children from playing sports should they move from one of the high schools to another. Remember Magnolia?
So the only thing I
Thoughts?
was thinking about this is that it doesn't say anything about redistricting, and because of what's going to happen with the new middle school, we're going to have students who maybe, depending on what happens with the timeline of constructing Pickering, might start out in one school and then go to another. And the policy doesn't say anything about that switching of schools due to redistricting.
It doesn't. I could be wrong here, but it does mention high school sports. So if they're moving from,
It could happen,
Yeah.
though, at the high school level as well,
they could end
right?
up switching to high school. I'm Dr. Alvarez. I don't know. Maybe you could help us with that a bit.
Don't know that we have a new high school on the
Yeah,
horizon,
yeah.
but, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I think that, we just need to be cautious with athletic rules in general. Because when we're talking about high school, we're looking at like college eligibility for
Yep.
playing, and age is also a factor. So I'm not sure that it's necessarily an issue. I don't think that around the country, we have restrictions anymore on specific like windows of having to wait to play, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking, in the instance, Member Magnolia, that you're talking about, the student wouldn't be transferring, they'd be reassessed.
Correct.
Okay, so it's
it
just
could be
a
So it
different
doesn't
thing.
apply?
situation.
Okay.
Yeah. So, just to,
Can I
yeah,
just ask
Member
Doc-
Magnolia, yeah, of course, yeah.
So are you saying, Dr. Alvarez, that you think the policy is antiquated, or you're saying that the policy should stand because of the competitive nature of being recruited for college sports? I
Well-
couldn't quite figure out which one you were
what,
leaning towards.
what I'm saying is, I'm not sure why this policy was created, if it was I don't know what the numbers were at the time, were athletes going from school to school? I mean, is it really is that the
Yes.
issue, like year to year?
They were.
Or,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, they were.
Yes.
And I might add, there can be a situation, I don't think it's,
I
does it
could
say
see
it in the
some
policy?
inequities with this too sometimes, you know, where
No.
someone might have to move, you know, from one side of the city to another.
That is also true. That doesn't mean they need to switch high schools, though.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but it could be,
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's a hardship for a lot of
Transportation.
families
Yeah.
that don't have transportation.
Member Gately, yeah.
Like a
it
true
could be
address change.
transportation, how they get
Yep.
there.
Yeah.
Yep. Are we saying remove this? This is a big one. If we were to remove this, this is a big, big
Which,
change.
you know, which happens.
And we all know what's going to happen if we do remove
know,
this, right?
Bulldogs are good this year, let me transfer there.
I think,
Yeah.
based on my experience.
Deputy Superintendent Gorse, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Based on my experience in other districts where there's multiple high schools, it's important to have a clear definition of athletic eligibility when one is transferring from one school to the other. We always know that adults have best intentions, but every once in a while, we do have some adults that want their teams to win. And they have relationships with students and families outside of the schools through other leagues, and that may influence a family to pick up and move in order to participate and play if they have the socioeconomic means to do so. So then you're creating even more inequities, right? Because you're targeting families that have or can be able to do that in order to influence your outcome as a coach in delivering a successful championship for that particular sport. So policies are about making sure that we have folks acting with integrity, right? And so I think this policy helps people stay acting in integrity, and the students that are assigned to that school are the ones that you're working with. And that dissuades from adults poaching or convincing or, trying to change a person's like kind of outcome.
Correct.
Based on maybe some personal interest. I do agree with Dr. Alvarez. We're all invested in our students having options after high school, especially through scholarships that are athletic focused in order to create more access to colleges and university post-secondary options. But we could potentially have an inequitable process if we remove those aspects from the policy. So that's just my experience, and you're not the only school committee that has this challenge with other districts that have multiple high schools in their districts.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great insight. Deputy Gorse, excuse me. Couldn't get that out. You have thoughts?
Yeah.
Member Magnolia, yes.
The thing that worries me is that we have a very transient student population. And the students who most might need to benefit from that kind of college recruiting would be the ones held to harm in this policy. That's my concern. Right? If your housing is unstable, and so you move multiple times within the city, each time you would move, maybe you would go back and forth 2 or 3 times into different schools. That's 1 year each time.
That is true. Are there any other thoughts? Yeah, Member Capola.
I'm just thinking, how does the MIAA classify? Like, for instance, recently there was an issue with
Recruiting.
recruiting. okay? And, they got their hand slapped. So, we should be proactive to try to make sure that we don't put ourselves in the middle of a scandal the way, that school put themselves in a scandal,
Agreed.
really.
Agreed.
Got to have a written policy that we can back up.
Correct.
Now, if somebody does it, then they're in violation, but if we don't have a policy,
Correct.
If you remember Everett
yeah,
football
Yeah.
was
exactly.
a big,
Yep.
they had big problems with this.
Mm-hmm.
They would bring
Yep.
players into the city. And I know from my own experience of graduating from Lynn English, I'm not going to say when, but families would say they were living, like they'd live with their aunt so that they could play with classical because classical had a great basketball team. Or they would live with their grandmother so that they could play at Lynn English because they had a strong baseball team. And so this, just in a city with multiple high schools, kind of kept at least control over it.
Yeah.
There is a waiver, not a waiver, but an appeal process that if a family, did move, has an athlete, wants to be able to move their child, they can put in, an appeal, and then we have a team of staff who meet with that player and family and get all the facts, and then a decision is made.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Dr. Alvarez, yeah, absolutely.
Policy says, consider every transfer student into your school to be ineligible until certified otherwise. So maybe it's just the administrative procedures of that review committee
Right.
that looks at the waiver and approves it prior to a student being eligible to play.
So I guess
Yeah,
one
Mrs. Presser.
thought would be to put, you may not want to do this because you may not want to open Pandora's box, but to put a phrase in the policy that allows for exceptions.
A waiver, essentially. Yeah.
Waiver.
That there is
After
an
review.
appeals process in each school for waivers to the policy.
Yeah, Member Gately, yeah.
Couldn't we just put somewhere in there about following the MIAA policy?
We could, but that would not restrict, again, I don't think the MIAA policy would restrict them from going from English to classical and just for purely sport reason and not have a
They'd be
penalty.
ineligible.
Not if they got a waiver.
In the MIAA 58.2
Yeah.
transfer student, it says, if the transfer was necessitated by a move of parents, then eligibility would be determined by the receiving school's eligibility standards. Rule 57.71.
Which, this is our schools, yeah. Our version of that they're referring to there. Could I make a recommendation that the full committee pretty much is here except for Member Castellanos, but could I make a recommendation to table this, to bring it to the full committee or at our next meeting? Because I feel like this is
That's a good idea.
this is a big one that affects
Yeah.
the district in a lot of
We
ways.
should speak to the
And,
coaches first,
and I think we need
or
to
the
speak to
principals.
ADs,
ADs.
coaches.
Get the ADs involved.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if this is one where this policy subcommittee
Yeah, we should have the athletics.
should be making this decision right now. Member Magnolia?
So here would be my recommendation that we send it off to these folks with. That what we are saying is that JJIBA, JJIC, JJICB be removed from the policy manual, and that they specifically look at JJICA.
Well, JJICB I wanted to talk about as well. I don't know if we had, I wanted to talk about that one as well. So before we say.
Oh,
let's
you
eliminate-
want to do the whole thing then?
I do. I think
Okay.
these are really important things and they're kind of Lynn specific, yeah.
I think we should table
Well, Amar. So, anyway,
just can-
JJICA, am I hearing that we think we should table this to the first full committee?
recommend that.
Okay.
Can
Member
I just,
Magnolia,
I,
yeah.
I think we might want to table it to have the ADs review it.
Correct.
Not just send it to the full committee first.
Okay.
And looks like Dr. Alvarez wants
Yes,
to weigh
Dr.
in.
Alvarez, go
Yes,
ahead.
and I think in addition to the ADs, I think we need to have some administrators, the high school
Agreed.
principals, look at this. And the impact, not, to students, but also, I don't think that the final appeal decision rests on them. They won't be able to manage, right, the number of requests either. So I think we need to look
Okay.
at, like, what does that administrative process look like? And listen to their recommendations as well as, you know, for potential issues that they feel that this may create in the way that we finalize a policy. And then carefully consider some of these points that MIAA,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I think it needs a little bit more consideration at this point.
Okay.
So I move
Member
to
Magnolia, yeah.
table JJIBA through JJICB for recommendations.
Wait a minute.
Well, I think it's JJICA. That's the only one we're talking about right now.
I
CA.
thought we wanted to talk about
W-
CB.
We're gonna bundle them together
We are?
so that anything that athletic directors, administration, et cetera, want to keep, want to get rid of, we can have their perspective on.
Okay.
So even the one that's just a quote from the MIAA handbook?
No, that one we said we'll strike. So that was,
JJIB.
That was JJIBA,
JJIBA,
the Good Citizen
Yeah.
Rule.
So I think
Okay.
we should probably, we might have jumped the gun a little bit. Let's take these one at a time. I think we should, my
So s-
recommendation would be, let's table for now, JJICA, until we can have, I guess, lack of a better term, a panel kind of determine whether or not that's something that's still pertinent to our district.
But that would also include JJICB.
Yeah.
That's the one that's connected with it. I'm trying to ascertain which ones we're tabling and which ones
So
we
I-
can strike out of hand.
My recommendation is just to, right now, I wanted to discuss JJICB, but that doesn't mean we have to. We could table it and they're not the same, they're different things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So JJIBA.
Sorry,
the
Mrs.
Good-
Presser, yes.
JJIBA, the Good Citizen Rule, we are
Striking.
striking.
Okay.
JJIC, I thought was going to find the same fate.
Correct, because that, we decided is for student handbook, correct?
Yep, student
Okay.
handbook.
And that brought us to JJICA.
Right, so
Right.
that and JJICB
I s-
are the
Which we
two-
have not discussed just
Right,
yet,
Okay,
correct?
so JJICA, we're not going to,
Tabling.
we're tabling for tonight. Bringing
That would
to another
be
place.
my recommendation, but, Member Magnolia, do you,
I guess my question was just, do we even want to discuss JJICB, or is it going to fall under the same category as JJICA? That was my, and I had erroneously grouped too many together. I apologize.
no, it's okay. It could very well, I mean, as we parse it out, it could very well end up that we decide it's a very similar situation, with the two Fs, because, yeah.
I'm trying to be efficacious with
No,
it.
I understand. Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Any other thoughts on that? I mean, did other members want to discuss JJICB, the two Fs rule?
Or table it.
Table, I
I
mean,
think we should table both of them.
table both, okay.
Okay.
All
So
right.
I'd like to move that we table JJICA, JJICB for recommendations from administration and athletic directors and other folks at LPS.
Second. Roll call, please.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Magnolia?
Yes.
Okay. I guess my next would, who would be tasked to, do you want me to reach out? Is that, how are we gonna reach out to the ADs? Who would be tasked?
Well,
You guys, okay.
yes,
Thank
we
you.
will do
Okay,
that
thank you.
internally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right. JJICB. Okay. All right. So that brings us to JJIF and JJIFR, Athletic Concussion Policy.
So JJIF, the two policies matched.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully not much discussion there. JJIF-R is an instance again where MASC does have regulations in the policy manual. I think you could go either way on this. Originally, when this concussion policy came into place, it was new, it was big, and I you know, I think some of the reason that the regulations landed in our manual was because it was new and big and we needed people to understand. Usually, if a school committee decides that they would like to have the regulations in, I defer and ask them to check with the AD or the head nurse or whoever to make sure that our model regulations actually match what they do, because in some cases, they may use different protocols or different, there's something about impact testing, some places use a different testing method. So if you want to have them in, we just want to make sure what you have actually matches the practice.
Okay. Any thoughts on?
I don't know what we have in place to know if this is gonna.
So that sounds like one maybe we want to table as well? Yeah.
You could table it, or you could say it's regulations, we're gonna, you know, we have a policy that says there will be regulations, and leave it to the.
That might be worthwhile, is just to keep JJIF as is and not adopt the R.
Okay.
And then make sure that whether it's, you know, procedure or regulations,
Yeah.
that we have something on the books
Yeah.
for this.
I'm pretty sure athletic trainers and people in charge of those things most likely do, yes.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. So keep JJIF
Yes.
and strike JJI.
This is a MASC recommendation, so.
Yes.
Yes.
We wouldn't strike it, we don't have it. do we?
Right.
Oh, correct, I'm sorry, thank you.
You would just
Yes.
not adopt it.
Yeah.
Just not adopted, right, okay. Ms. Jules, you good with all? Okay. All right, it's a lengthy one. Get through the next.
ADs, no, not adopt the audit they need to do. So,
Okay, and then the next one brings us to JK, which we're going to.
yes, just skip
Right,
over.
we're gonna skip over that for now. Okay. So anything with the first two letters JK, we are skipping over.
Yes.
It's quite a bit. Okay, and that brings us to JL, student welfare. I believe.
Okay, so on this one, the policies matched with one exception. At the very end, the last section of the policy about fire drills, there's just a little bit more comprehensive information in the MASC version about reporting of fires.
Yeah, I would think we keep to adopt the MASC version of
Correct,
that. Yeah,
yeah.
okay. So adopt MASC version of JL, student welfare.
So-
Okay, that brings JLA, insurance, but that's,
Oh, did I miss that one?
yeah, there's one in the packet that we got that says JLA insurance, but it
Oh,
wasn't.
does this, yes, I missed that one, sorry about that.
That's okay.
So this, we removed this from our manual as sort of not necessary at this point.
Okay.
Because, partly because the state law requires everybody have insurance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So it's really not.
okay, so remove JLA. All right, JLC, excuse me, student health services and requirements.
So really simple difference in wording here. Our policy refers to EMTs and your policy refers to paramedic assistant unit.
Okay.
That's really the only difference.
Yeah, I'm okay with the MASC version there then, just. Magnolia, any thoughts there?
I would just keep the Lynn one, because then we don't have to do anything.
Keep the Lynn one? Okay, that's fine with me.
Gets you to the same place.
Mm-hmm. All right. So next is JLC-E, Statement of Philosophy, Health.
So this is when we went through your materials. We found this in the online manual.
Yes.
It's actually not in the materials provided.
Right.
It's really more an aspirational statement than a policy. and
Yeah.
it probably isn't even current, because it mentions specific curriculum and instruction materials that may not exist anymore. So I would remove it.
Take it out. Yeah, I have that in my notes as well. Just take that out.
Here's looking at you, 2000.
Yeah.
being
that's-
used
No,
anymore?
we do not use that. I don't think we do. I don't think we do.
Just noting.
Yeah. Okay, so remove JLC-E. All right. JLCA, physical examination of students.
So in this one, I would go with the MASC version as being a little bit more updated according to the Department of Public Health requirements. It also covers more topics such as religious exemptions for immunizations, which aren't covered in the Lynn version, and physicals for athletic participation.
Which is,
I could not find, and I looked, I've in doing policy manuals, I have never seen a requirement for dental checkups. I couldn't find that the state requires it. So
yeah, I don't, yeah,
it's kind of hard to enforce, I think, unless you're willing to do it for the kids that don't get it.
yeah. Yeah, I'm fine with adopting
MASC.
MASC version there, right? Okay, and then that brings us to JLCA-R-1, JLCB-R-1. Which is-
Both of these looked to me like quotes from law,
Yeah,
rather than,
I agree. So saying remove
Yep.
those two, okay,
Yep.
remove those two. Okay. JLCB, immunization of students.
so the one that we just deleted, the JLCA/JLCB from Lynn, had information about immunization. This is a little bit more comprehensive.
Okay.
And again, covers exceptions, so I would adopt this one.
Okay, so the thought is to adopt the MASC policy of JLCB. And Magnolia, okay? Okay. Mrs. Jewell's good over there? Okay. All right,
JLCB-R-1.
dash R-1, thank you.
That one is, yeah.
Looks like procedure.
It's procedure,
Yeah,
correct.
that's right.
So that would be remove. Okay, JLCC, communicable diseases.
Let me, losing my place here, sorry.
That's okay.
I don't think I have the Lynn version in front of me.
That's all right. I can read your recommendation from the
Yeah.
notes. It says,
Yeah.
the 3 paragraphs in the Lynn version are direct quotes of the sections of law listed in the legal references. MASC version gives more guidance about how the law would be applied in the educational setting. So your recommendation is adopt the MASC version,
Yes.
which I agree with. Member Magnolia, good?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's also some weird reporting requirements in the Lynn one that I don't think
Yeah.
are applicable.
No, we're all
Yeah.
mandated, well, the mandated reporting state law, so
Yeah.
covers that, right?
I think also COVID might have blown that to shreds.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if our public health person had to certify every child returning to school?
Don't
Our
think we'd
attendance
have
rate
that
would be
person anymore.
Yeah, exactly. We would have a lot more problems.
Yeah. Okay, so JLCC-R.
Okay, so this looks to me like it's not a policy.
No,
So
I
I
don't,
would
this
remove
just
it.
looks like a list of, recommended treatments, almost, yeah.
Last time I knew, dog bites also were not a communicable disease, so I'm not.
No, and chickenpox, kids get vaccinated, so yeah, this is outdated, this is, yeah.
JLCCA can be removed.
Mhm.
First of all, it's more policy than procedure. Secondly, HIV or AIDS would fall under communicable diseases.
Yes.
This is a moment in time too, I think.
Yeah.
I believe so,
definitely,
yeah.
Definitely.
I
I
believe
think
so.
decades ago, the MASC policy that is now communicable diseases was HIV/AIDS.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, a
Um,
moment in time.
Yep.
Yeah.
So then JLCCA-E- 2 is very similar, so I
Yeah.
would just, yeah.
And dash one.
Yeah,
Dash,
dash
yes.
1, excuse me.
Yeah.
1 and 2,
I think
yeah.
they both
Yeah, they both could be removed, I
can
thought.
be removed.
They're
And then-
long, too.
They are, yeah. Takes a minute to get through those. So we're looking for JLCCB when you guys. Okay, so JLCCB head lice policy.
So again, this looks to me like procedure more than it is policy.
Agree. Agree. So remove JLCCB. JLCD, administrating medication to students, excuse me.
This is an instance, I think, where the MASC policy is longer, but it gives more explicit authority on who can administer medication, outlines the exceptions for students to be able to self-administer, and it also covers the administration of naloxone, which is not covered in your policy.
Narcan, correct? Is that?
Yeah, Narcan,
Okay,
yep.
that's Narcan, okay. Yeah, I would
I agree.
think we accept the MASC version of that as well. Magnolia, you good with that?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, oh, yes. Attorney Gallo.
Thank you, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to point out that the nurses had presented a policy on that about a year and a half or so ago. And I wanted to make sure that you weren't in conflict with that one. I don't think it was posted maybe on the website, but I just wanted to know that there was one document.
Okay. So is your recommendation maybe hold off on that? Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Maybe hold off on
JLC.
Hold off on
JLCE, yes.
Wait,
Oh, no, JLCD,
D.
excuse me, JLCD.
Yep.
So we can check with the nurses, okay. Let me just write that in my notes.
So that would have been adopted by the school committee then?
Right.
Okay.
I think I do recall that as well, yeah. I don't remember the specifics of the policy, but yes. Okay, so hold off on JLC.
Would it be possible to get that?
Do I need to table it then?
D, yeah, so we're gonna need to make.
Okay, so I move we table JLCD
Oh.
to check on its complicity with a previously passed policy.
I'll check with the
Okay.
nurses.
Second, roll call?
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Magnolia?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. So that brings us to JLCE, Emergency First Aid Policy.
So emergency first aid was actually covered in JLC,
Yep.
so this would not be necessary.
Okay. So remove JLCE. Member Magnolia, you good?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, next one's the emergency plan, JLCE-R-1.
And dash R dash 2. I
Yep,
think we could look at those together and say they're both procedure.
I agree, yep. So remove JLCE-R-1, remove JLCE-R-2. Okay. And that brings us to JLD. Just give me one moment, get my papers there. Okay, so that's the guidance program. Mrs. Presser, your thoughts?
So we used to have a guidance, MASC, we used to have a guidance program policy that we removed it because it was the only program that had its own policy, and that didn't quite seem right. So I would recommend removal.
Okay. I'm okay with that, seeing it really is the only one. I don't know, I guess maybe I'd like to ask you, Dr. Alvarez, what your thoughts on that would be, removing that policy.
Yeah, I'm in,
You're okay with that?
yes, I'm
Okay.
in agreement with that. This is procedural and administrative in terms of how we provide guidance to, right, counselors to do, whether it's information, placement, groups, evaluations.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so remove JLD, okay. JLD-E-1.
Oh, my head.
I
Isn't
don't
this-
believe this falls under the umbrella of being a
Correct, these just
policy.
look like symptoms that we should be looking for, right? Okay.
Same with E dash 2.
2, and I think 3 as well, yeah.
Yes.
And,
Okay.
yeah, we're going into Rs also. There
Yeah,
a lot of these.
I
are
think the
just-
Rs are the same.
Yes.
So, yeah, just, Mrs. Jewell, so just remove JLD-E 123. We're removing all those, and then we get to JLD-R-1, and the thought is remove that as well.
Yeah,
R-2.
And then
As,
JLD-R-2.
yeah.
Okay. All right.
So JLDBA, I think that there are parts of this that you might feel rise to the level of policy. But once you get down to prevention strategies and on the rest of those would to me fall under procedure.
Yeah.
So if you wanted, if the desire were to be to keep a policy about prevention and intervention, I would keep the top two sections.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
eliminate the rest.
I wrote that in my notes as well. Yeah, those top two sections I think could be valuable in a policy manual, but other than that, I think it is procedural. Dr. Magnolia, any thoughts there?
Agree.
Okay. All right, so keep JLDBA, just the first two parts, the statement, policy statement, and policy guidelines. Everything else will be removed. Okay.
JLDB, this topic was actually covered under JL in student welfare. And much of this document actually covers procedure.
Right,
So there's a place for it to reside, but it's not the policy manual.
okay. So remove JLDBD-E-1. All right.
And then we're going to do another one
I
with
think
the
we have a
two,
bunch, yeah,
two,
that are
3,
coming.
and then the R.
Yep, yep.
Can I just ask a question?
Absolutely, yeah, Dr. Alvers.
Attorney Gallo, this is all under mandated reporters.
Yep, I have that in my
Does
notes as
it-
well.
Require a policy for us?
The statute is pretty clear.
Okay. Okay.
Right, right. Okay, so just again, remove JLDB-E-1-E-2-E-3, and then JLDBD-R. Good with that, okay. All right, and then that brings us to JLDBG. Just give me a minute, just catch up in my papers here. There's a lot going on there.
I know.
All right. So trauma management, death, grief, and loss.
Again, this looks like procedure to me.
I agree. Yeah, this looks like procedure as well. So I don't
Yep.
know what I had myself. I'm sorry, Dr. Banger.
Yeah,
Yep.
we're good.
Remove JLDBG.
As well as the dash E.
Dash E. Yeah. And dash R as well, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
So all of the JLDBGs will go. All right. So that brings us to JL1, student safety eye protection devices.
Actually, JLI, but.
I'm sorry, what did I say, 1? I'm sorry. These glasses not working.
Again,
JL1.
this was covered under JL, student
Okay.
welfare, and most of it is procedural. So
Okay, so remove JLI, not 1. Roman numeral 1. Okay, JLIB, student dismissal precautions.
So, we don't have it in front of us tonight, but the student dismissal was really covered under attendance.
Agreed, yeah,
Under
so,
the attendance policy, so I don't think you need this.
no, I don't think so either. Dr. Magnolia, okay. So remove JLIB. And then JLIE, seems procedural as well, Mrs. Presser.
Looks
Yep.
like a handbook
Yep,
issue, not a policy issue.
agreed. And then that's different within schools as well. To have a overlying statement, I think is, yeah. You okay with that, Member Magnolia?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
okay.
we get emails about it, but I don't
We
think
do.
that means it belongs in the
It
policy
doesn't.
manual.
No, I think that's more school to school, right? Okay, JM, student awards and scholarships.
So this one, the policy lays out the criteria for the establishment and awarding of scholarships. But it gives approval of that to the school committee. In other policies that I've seen, the policy lays out the guidelines, but gives approval to the appropriate administrators, which seems a better direction to go in.
Yeah, I would tend
That's
to
the way it
agree.
really works.
Member Magnolia, you good with that? So rather than,
So
we'd have to reword it a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's take a look. So under approval of scholarships, an individual business or organization desiring to award a scholarship to a graduating senior must secure school committee approval before the scholarship can be presented. Is that the sentence in question that we're?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's take a look at that. So would we word it to,
that whole paragraph is going to have to be reworded
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
basically it charges the school committee
yeah.
with a level of oversight that we don't exercise.
No, we do not. At least we haven't yet, no. At least since I've been on.
Dr. Alvarez, do you know if we have a procedure for scholarships?
Yeah.
Deb, do you know?
Yeah, a lot of them are handled through the schools. A few of them are handled through the superintendent's office, only because we're not really sure why they're handled by us. Where the plan for us was to keep them in our office until the money runs out, and then they will be dispersed through the schools.
Okay. Member Gately, yes, your thoughts?
In my experience, the student award and scholarships, usually they write something, the principals and teachers and people on the committee look through it, and they pick, and then they hand out the scholarship.
I think this is not who the scholarship gets awarded to. It's really, is this a scholarship that we want to entertain
Endorse,
having?
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the issue, is that it charges us with oversight that we don't currently
Right.
exercise at all whatsoever. I mean, anyone can like say, I'm going to run a 5K and take that money and turn it into a scholarship right now, and it doesn't come before us.
Right. So I wonder if, in the spirit of some of the other ones we've held on, if you would like to hold on this, and I can find maybe some examples from other school
great.
committees
Yeah.
that might fit the bill.
Yeah, because
If I know the direction that you want to go in, then,
the more I look at it, the more the words school committee are in there, so it's
Yeah.
almost the whole thing.
It really
Yeah,
is.
It really is. It's more than just that first sentence, yeah.
Can I also
Member Magnolia, yes.
ask if the superintendent's office would like to think about how it would like these handled, especially because we've got a piecemeal approach right now? If centralization makes sense for the district, if decentralization makes sense for the district, then we should do one or the other, not both, which is what we're currently doing. So I think in addition to Ms. Presser looking at other policies, I'd like to hear from central administration to see what their preferred method would be, and we can dovetail those two.
Okay. Yeah, Member Gately, yes.
Also, they have a web page on every high school, or at every high school in the city of Lynn, and the guidance counselor runs it, and they have every possible scholarship that's available for all our students, and they just, when the application is due, how do you get that application, whatever, and I think they vet them.
Speaking from experience this past year with my son, yeah, that's exactly how it happens. And there's nothing in our policy that says anything about that. So technically, that isn't how it should be happening according to our policy. So, yeah, we need to, yeah,
Right.
Dr.
It's-
Alvarez,
And
yeah.
so this, I don't know that ever, right, a school committee would be making those decisions, and based on what, I mean, as you said, every individual scholarship might have a different criteria based on if it's an organization outside that's awarding that. And it's also depending on where the funds are going, not necessarily given to the principal either. I mean, the principal may be noticed, but not necessarily sitting, right, in receipt of school funds necessarily. So I don't know that this is even, I think it's more of a procedure to me in terms
Yeah.
of how it principals need to handle recognitions of, but I don't know that they approve any scholarships. I mean, if students have eligibility for scholarship guidelines, whether they're on merit or athletic, why would they
Yeah, so
need
it's-
approval?
So it's not that the administrator would have to say, yes, it's okay for this student to get that scholarship. It's the establishment of the scholarship to follow guidelines like it's equitable for all students, or it addresses, so it's not saying approving who gets the scholarship, it's approving establishment of the scholarship. Does that make sense?
Establishment of the process
Yeah.
in providing access to the scholarships.
Right.
Right, but that's what
But
this
sometimes
says
the
is.
scholarship will decide, like, when I was chair of the school committee, there was one scholarship where who got the scholarship was determined by the high school principal, the superintendent, and the chair of the school committee. That was what the scholarship required, right?
Yeah.
Thank you. So we probably do want more discussion at another meeting.
Okay.
And that what the policy should be really high level, like
Yeah.
scholarships should have a level of equity in them, policies, so they should not be discriminatory, they should, and then it gets handed over to the administration to do everything else.
Okay.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this
Uh-huh.
one, this is asking for the school committee to say, for example, a business decides that they want to provide a scholarship, do they have your blessing?
Right,
Yeah.
that's how I'm reading it, too.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
that's why-
Approval of
Zero.
scholarships,
Yeah.
right.
That's why we don't want it
Yeah,
like
did
that.
you want to
But
add?
that's exactly
Oh,
what
that's
I
what you
was
were
going
gonna
to
say. Okay,
say.
okay.
I'm reading
Yeah.
this
Right.
as it's about either local businesses, a family who lost maybe a family member who wants to memorialize that person by giving a scholarship,
Correct.
and that they're looking for the blessing of school committee to be able to give a scholarship,
Yeah.
and that it would be school committees. I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
The way I'm
Yeah.
reading
The way
this.
you're reading it,
That,
correct.
that scholarship would follow, like, we would follow certain criteria for that scholarship to become a scholarship we're offering.
Right,
Correct.
so the policy would be, here's a few criteria for a scholarship, and as long as
It
it follows
fits
those
in that.
criteria, then the administration can say yes, or it doesn't, the administration can
Correct,
say,
yeah.
no, it doesn't follow our
Which
policy.
still sounds procedural, not like they need a
Oh,
approval.
exactly,
Yeah.
100%, 100%,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay. Member Magnolia, yes.
So I'd like to table JM so that we can review it.
Okay, second. Roll call, please.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Member Magnolia?
Yes.
Okay, so table JM, all right. Thank you for that discussion. All right, JO,
It looks,
employment of students' work release.
looked to me more like procedure than policy, handbook material more than policy.
I agree. Member Magnolia? Okay. So remove JO. JP, student gifts and solicitations.
So this was covered in JJE.
Yep.
So we can remove
I
a
think this can go
JP.
away.
Okay. Remove JP. JQ, student fees, fines, and charges.
So in this case, the MASC policy did provide more guidance on when, and parameters around when fees may or may not be charged. So
Okay.
I think it might, it may be the better direction to go in.
To adopt MASC?
Yeah.
Okay.
Agree.
Yep, I agree as well. So adopt the MASC version of JQ. All right, JRA, student records. Oh, I'm sorry, Member Gately.
I do not recall any fees that we have, student fees. Could you please tell me what student fees we have?
Do you want me to?
Yeah, Deputy Superintendent Jarrett, yes,
So-
please, thank you.
So what this is talking about is, so if student was given a textbook
Oh, okay.
and didn't return the textbook, typically the schools would ask for financial,
Contribution.
to replace the textbook.
Yeah.
Same for the laptop device or things like that. That's what this is speaking to.
Like a uniform too in sports, I think.
Uniform in
if they don't return the
sports,
uniform,
correct.
Yeah, they'd be charged
Yeah.
for that, right. Okay.
So JRA, somehow there were 2 Lynn versions of JRA.
Okay.
Um,
There are.
And so I think it's the longer one that we want to be looking at as opposed to the shorter one, in looking at the MASC versus the Lynn version. A little bit different approach. The Lynn version really talked about the ability of access to student records on the part of the parents and the student, parent, guardian, and the student. The MASC version talks more about record retention regulations.
Okay. I wrote in my notes.
But I did notice there are specific names
There,
in the Lynn
there are in the
policy
Lynn
that,
one, yeah.
If
Green
that's the
building.
direction you want to go in, I think a more general title rather than the names.
Yeah, for example, it says compliance officer and has her name, Maureen Horgan, so we'd want to just compliance officer.
Yep.
Stop there, right. Member Angolia, yes.
What do you think about merging the two so that we have both in our student records policy? So that we have both the retention and the access pieces?
Yep, yep.
Okay.
So that our new JRA would start out with the MASC version and then go into the Lynn version. And then in the Lynn version, we would strike out all given names.
That works for me.
Yeah, I actually like that idea. So you're, again, just to review, you're saying keep those first 3 paragraphs in the MA, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm looking at
Yep.
the Lynn version.
No, the MASC has
Oh, no,
3
I'm sorry, yeah,
paragraphs.
MASC, the first 3 paragraphs, then go into the Lynn version and remove names.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
so it's
okay
a
with that.
merge.
Yep.
okay,
That works.
all right.
And then eliminate whatever the second JRA is that Lynn has, that is ABC and then NB. Since we have 2.
Do we have
Yep.
2? Yeah. I guess,
I mean, it's almost a very brief, broad overview of the longer version.
yeah, yeah. So we want to keep the longer one.
Yes.
And eliminate the shorter one, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it.
Keep R.
Yeah.
Did you get that?
I'm
Ms.
sorry.
Yeah, you okay
Okay.
with that, Mrs. Jules? Okay. All right.
So JRA-R, from what I could tell, is just the regulations from the state, and you can just take it out.
Yep. So remove JRA-R. Member Angolia, okay with that? Okay. And then finally, JRD, student photographs.
We're on fire.
Machine.
We're policy fire. That's what we are.
Rapid fire over here.
So the only difference between the two is the last sentence of the first paragraph in the Lynn version about awarding of photographic services through the bidding process does not exist in the MASC one. Do not believe that it is required under statute for you to get bids for photographic services.
Okay. Yeah, I wrote in my notes, adopt MASC. Member Angolia, you
Yeah,
okay with
that's
that?
fine.
Okay. So adopt the MASC version of JRD. And that brings us to the end. Wow. Other than the things we need to, that we tabled, which are meaty.
Can I move everything
Oh,
but what we
can-
tabled?
Yeah.
I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
Deputy
Can I just
Superintendent
ask
Jarrett.
a
No, don't
question?
apologize. Of course, yeah.
So that bidding process, so I recall when, as a principal, we all used to use the same company as a district. And then there was a point where we were told you could use whoever you wanted. And so that's when I think this bidding process came into play, that
Okay.
companies could send you, okay, what are you looking for? School tells them what they're looking for. Okay, it would be this. We can give your families a less cost in a package than what the other company was.
So there's, it used to be in our policy and we took it out. Because you don't need to you can do what you are saying as opposed to putting out to bid and taking the
Okay.
lowest qualified
Okay.
bidder.
I just wanted
It's
clarification.
the 30B issue.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, because we did come to the end, I want to make sure I've got all this in my notes. So we are tabling let me put my glasses on before I say one instead of I. JJICBA. We are tabling JJICB, JLCD, and JM. Is there anything I missed there, Mrs. Jules?
That's what I have. That's what I have.
Okay. All right, so we still have some work to do, but yeah, thank you everybody for your time. That was
You don't want me to move the rest to the committee until we deal with the tabled, or should we? No. Okay.
I think we should hold off until we finish the tabled, and then
Okay.
we'll just move section J to the.
So, there's a piece of section J before the discipline policies that we also need to,
Yeah.
Just a point of
Rest.
clarification, were those done prior to when Mayor Nicholson was the chair, or those are?
the discipline policies were
We-
when.
Okay,
Yep,
okay, thank
yep,
you, thank
yep,
you. Okay, okay,
yep.
I just want to make sure,
But,
okay.
and then that was sort of a middle section of section J.
Okay,
So we need to do the ones that come up to the discipline. The discipline ones are done. So probably best to wait until you've got all of section J that's not discipline, to bring it to the full committee.
so everything except JK would bring to the full committee, and then, yeah.
But the reason that we needed to do the search policy is so that it's in place. So that one individually will be voted on by the committee of the
That
whole.
one we moved to,
Yes.
did we move that one
Yes,
to the
we
full
moved it
committee?
to the You did.
We did, all right, so
So
that one
will
was
go
moved
on the agenda, I would think, for the first meeting, which would be
Correct.
September 14th,
September
Correct.
14th.
along with the technology policies, I believe have to.
Yes, those were moved to
Those
the full
also have
committee
to
as
be on
well.
the agenda for the 14th.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct,
Okay?
okay. Okay,
And those are all section I policies, correct?
yes, those are all section I, correct. Okay, seeing no further business?
Move to adjourn?
Second, roll call, please.
Member Dugan?
Yes,
Member Magnolia?
Yes.
okay, meeting adjourned. Ooh, that was aggressive.
Sorry.
Look at that. 7:42.
A meeting